3rd July, I spoke about the transformational leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. Some of his main traits, his economic thoughts, and the theory of trusteeship. I thank you all for your overwhelming participation in that. Today, in the third course, I will talk about Mahatma Gandhi's spirituality, health and wellness practices, nature cure, his contribution in health emergencies, and his environment credo. Mahatma Gandhi is universally accepted as an exemplary model of ethical, spiritual, and moral life, with a rare blending of personal and public life, the principles and practices, the immediate and the eternal. He considered life to be an integrated whole, growing from truth to truth every day in moral and spiritual status. He believed in a single standard of conduct founded on dharma of truth and non-violence. He successfully led non-violent struggles against racial discrimination, colonial rule, economic and social exploitation, and moral degradation. So long as these manifestations of violence will remain, Gandhiji will remain relevant too. To Gandhiji, ethics, morality, virtue, values, dharma, and spirituality are overlapping and interchangeable terms and are concerned with the way we live. He said, and I quote, I do not believe that the spiritual law works on a field of its own. It expresses only through the ordinary activities in the economic, the social, and the political fields. In his paraphrase of William Salter's book titled Ethical Religion, he tells us, and I quote, the different sciences show us the world as it is. Ethics tells us what it ought to be. It enables man to know how he should act. That is, true morality, true civilization, and true progress are always to be found together. The attempt to do good to mankind is the highest morality, and he alone is religious, happy, wealthy, who bears no malice, exploits no one, and always acts with a pure mind. Such men alone can serve mankind. This is how Gandhiji expressed his eternal principles of truth and nonviolence in his autobiography, and I quote, truth is the sovereign principle, which includes numerous other principles. The truth is not only the relative truth of our conception, but the absolute truth, the eternal principle, that is God. The seeker after truth should be humbler than the dust. The only means for the realization of truth is non-violence. To see the universal spirit of truth face to face, one must be able to love the meanest of creation as oneself. Non-violence is the farthest limit of humility, he had said. As Gandhiji stated, non-violence is the law of our species, as violence is the law of the brute. Otherwise, human society would not have survived. Only non-violence can resist violence. Otherwise, superior violence would prevail. Non-violence means love for all, fearlessness, and the capacity to suffer for what one considers to be right and sacrifice for others. From the basic principles of truth and non-violence, he derived various ethics of human behavior, particularly those of right means for right ends, primacy of duties over rights, and resist evil, not the evildoer. As he said, and I quote, those who seek to destroy men rather than manners adopt the latter and become worse. They do not know the root of the evil. To him, True religion does not mean sectarianism. It means a belief in the ordered moral government of the universe. It transcends Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, etc., and harmonizes them and gives them reality. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy and practice of spirituality have its roots in classical Indian thought, but was suffused by the ideas from the East and the West. The seeds of his thoughts were Indian, but were nourished by influences from everywhere. According to him, persons are instinctively brute, but inherently spiritual. Consequently, he or she has, on the one hand, natural attraction to bodily satisfaction, indulgence, self desires, and craving. On the other hand, he or she aspires for self realization between selfishness and selfless impulses. Gandhiji's advice is that it might be more useful to think in terms of the object of life that gives primacy to self realization and the soul, which allows one to know one's duty. Although, in his emphasis on knowing the self and recognizing one's duty, he has not disregarded the body entirely. For him, the body was the temple that contains the soul. Therefore, it would be important to take care of the body to become well nourished and healthy. Gandhiji was a strong believer in Hinduism, which he called the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion. He wrote, and I quote, Hinduism of my conception is no narrow creed. It is a grand evolutionary process as ancient as time and embraces the teachings of Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and other prophets I could name. Equally, he had reverence for all the religions of the world. Gandhiji used to begin and end his day with prayers. These were prayers from all the religions of the world. Gandhiji's internal core comprised of the essence of all the religions, one that he had acquired from long study and reflection. The devotional poetry of the saint poets that he had heard, sung, and absorbed since childhood made up a significant part of the life of his soul. Gandhiji said that ultimately all the religions point to the same truth of brotherhood, compassion, love, forgiveness, friendship, and tolerance, and that everyone must study the essence of all the religions in an attitude of perfect reverence and must have friendship and respect for the practitioners of different religions and diverse cultures. In this direction, the prayers from all the religions were the first step towards cultivating interfaith understanding. In the ashram of Mahatma Gandhi in my childhood, the day used to begin at 4 a.m. as we set out for the all religious prayers or Sarvadharma Prarthana in the prayer ground or the Prarthana Bhumi situated next to the cottage where Bapu used to stay, and it used to be called Bapu Kuti and still is called Bapu Kuti. And the evening prayer used to take place exactly there at 6 p.m. Though for the children like me it was a fun thing, but has made a strong imprint in my life as I continue to do so even till today. It gives me the internal strength and calmness. According to me, Gandhiji's life possesses a quality that exceeds all accounts of it in terms of its spiritual dimensions. Gandhiji considered spirituality as the primary dimension of his life. He wrote, and I quote, what I want to achieve, what I have been striving and pining to achieve these 30 years is self realization, to see God face to face, to attain moksha or salvation. I live and move and have my being in the pursuing of this goal. All that I do by way of speaking and writing, and all my ventures in the political field are directed to the same end. Gandhiji in his time wielded more power over the minds of people than any other individual. But it was not the power of weapons or terror or violence. It was the power of his convictions, his pursuit of truth and non-violence, fearlessness, love, justice, working through incessant service, and sacrificing for the fellow human beings. His power came from empowering the weak to lead the masses in the fight against injustice, exploitation, violence, and discrimination. Satyagraha elevated the struggle for survival to the highest moral, spiritual levels, and ordinary, emaciated people turned heroes. His power arose through the people whom he gave a sense of self respect, purpose, and moral strength. Gandhiji's spiritual life could be seen in the way he spoke, conducted, and led his life. He spoke in a low tone and was a hesitant public speaker. Yet people of all classes and religions were drawn to him and instinctively felt him to be the leader of deeply spiritual and moral perceptions, which he sought to realize through the pursuit of truth. Over 54 years of Gandhiji's public life were lived as an open book. He lived in South Africa for 20 years and then in India from 1915. All through his life, he remained a seeker after truth. Gandhiji's lifestyle provides us the role model of the ways of spiritual development. It was not the result of overnight change, but a gradual and studied change brought about by his endeavors over the years. Moral and spiritual training remain the foundation of all Gandhiji did. His understanding of the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian scripture, contributed substantially towards this understanding. Thus, he imbibed from the main teachings of the Bhagavad Gita the main messages which lay down the conduct of a person driven by selfless work, desireless actions, renouncing fruits of action, and dedicating all the activities to God. Gandhiji cultivated detachment and desirelessness in his relations, wealth, and material objects. He dealt with millions of rupees but did not have any personal property. He chose voluntary poverty and got detached from all the institutions that he had founded and nurtured. Renunciation of the fruit of action is perhaps the most difficult to attain. Gandhiji left the results of action to God and remained free from worries. The best way to attain selflessness and non attachment is to engross oneself completely in an objective that is much larger than the self. Gandhiji had such an objective before him. They were activities where he submerged himself. The ability of non attachment towards his own actions and movements gave him the capacity to rise above daily actions and gave him the spiritual strength. This also gave him the unique ability to touch the hearts of his opponents. Throughout his life, Mahatma Gandhi engaged in finding solutions through interreligious and intercultural dialogues. He had deep respect for the world religions and developed lifelong friendship with people from different religions. He took time to study, reflect, and engage with different faiths and faith communities. During his lifetime, Gandhiji had read the Bible and the Holy Quran, and of course the Bhagavad Gita more than once. Gandhiji cultivated respect for the teachings of Islam and Christianity as well as for the other world religions. To him, the spirit of service and sacrifice was the key. For the spirit of service to materialize, we must lay stress on our responsibilities and duties and not on rights. He illustrated it through the example of concentric circles. One starts with service of those nearest to one and expands the circle of service until it covers the universe. No circle thriving at the cost of the circles beyond. Service to him implied self sacrifice. He said, and I quote, "Sacrifice is the law of life. It runs through and governs every walk of life. We can do nothing or get nothing without paying a price for it. In other words, without sacrifice." Today, we see that we have become a society madly chasing wealth and exploring the common resources for satisfying our greed. Mahatma Gandhi is a call from behind. He urges us to enjoy a simple and satisfying life by taking care of nature. Gandhiji's antidote for those of us tired of chasing luxuries and living a life of unhappiness is to adopt a simple and minimalist life. Can we find the will to turn back from our insatiable greediness and follow Him to simple and content life? This is the question. Gandhiji refrained from overindulging in anything. He maintained that non attachment to material things is a total necessity to live a simple and full life. Nothing could bring him into doing something that he did not have full faith in. In Gandhiji's life, vows and pledges played an important role too. Before leaving for England to study law at the age of 18, he had to get his mother's consent to cross the sea. For him, it was the most difficult task, as his mother had made inquiries and found that people who went to England ate meat, drank liquor, and did not remain faithful to their wives. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi solemnly took the three vows at the age of 18 to abstain from these three vices and set his mother's mind free, and she willingly gave her consent. However, once he was on board the ship, people started giving unsolicited advice about his vows and was told that in the cold weather in England he could not survive without liquor. Not only that, as soon as the ship enters the Mediterranean, he would also not be able to do without it. Though it was biting cold, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi thought that if I survive this, never again in life will I be troubled by this vow. And others too did not try to convince him to give up this vow. In fact, this vow contributed to some extent in increasing his popularity because when he became a barrister, he had completed his education, but as he had not completed his term, he had to go back to the Lincoln Inn where he had studied, have his dinner there, and then sign in the register. Only if there were a certain number of signatures would he get the certificate as a barrister. Hence, he had to stay on for an additional 6 months. However, in these 6 months, he utilized the time to study deeply and did not have time for other activities. On the day of the dinner, at the table where Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi had to have his dinner, there used to be tremendous rush to get a seat. It was because the bottle that was brought for him could be shared by others, sharing his table. Thus, he became popular, and keeping this vow was very easy for him. The, sec- the second vow was the most difficult because when somebody repeatedly tried to convince him about why it was important to be a non vegetarian from reading out from the book, Gandhiji simply told them that if they wanted to read the book to him, he would listen to everything, but that would not in any way change his decision. Once, his friend took him to a restaurant. Gandhiji kept on looking at the menu, and the waiter was called. And he asked him to explain what was vegetarian and what was non vegetarian in this menu. The host got very annoyed and said one cannot ask such questions in such places. And if you want, you can just leave the place. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi left with a sigh of relief. He knew exactly which places served vegetarian food, and actually, in the same street, there was a vegetarian restaurant. But when he reached there, it was already shut. So he had to give up eating on that evening. In another instance, all through his 3 years in England, only once did he fall seriously ill. The doctor told him that if he did not eat meat, he would die. Gandhiji said that he would inform about his decision the next day. On the next day, the doctor brought some steaming hot meat soup and told him to treat it as medicine and drink it as per the advice of the treating doctor. At that point, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi questioned the doctor as to whether he would be cured if he drank the soup and would he die if he did not drink it. Can you say it with certainty? He asked the doctor. The doctor was truthful. He said, life and death are in the hands of the Lord above. The doctor was honest about it. But he said if he did not drink the soup, he would not be his doctor from tomorrow. And Gandhiji replied, and I quote, life and death are in the hands of the power above, but keeping one's vow is in the hands of those below, right? That I cannot give up to God. I cannot say that I broke the vow because God made me do it. About the third vow, Gandhiji has written in quite some detail in his autobiography, and I would suggest to you, all of you, to definitely start reading more about Mahatma Gandhi by starting with the autobiography. And that he wrote under the heading, Lord Rama is my succor, as God always saved him from breaking the vow. I will move on to the environmental concerns at this point. His environmental practices were based on conservation of natural resources, which were often misused and overused for the sake of industrial development. Gandhiji had warned about the unsustainability on the global scale more than a century ago. Greed would be the main reason for the environmental degradation and the ecological crisis he had predicted. He had famously said, the earth has enough for man's needs, but not for man's greed. Further, he had said, and I quote, the earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we have to hand it over to them as it was handed over to us. Gandhiji had cautioned the world much before any modern day environmentalist about the problems of large scale industrialization which we are confronting today. Gandhiji visualized that mechanization will not only lead to industrialization but to massive urbanization, to unemployment, but will also lead to the destruction of environment. His seminal work Hind Swaraj, written 113 years ago in 1909, warned about the dangers the world is facing today in the form of environmental destruction, ecological crisis, and the threat to the planet Earth. The Gandhian idea becomes still more relevant when sustainable growth and development is to be achieved because he emphasized on production by the masses instead of mass production. According to Gandhiji, this will result in the development of an economic system that could minimize environmental degradation and achieve sustainable development. His idea of Swaraj or self rule enables a practical sustainable development solution that could be implemented without compromising the quality of life. From his childhood in India, Gandhiji was influenced by Jainism, which looks at nature as a living entity and exhorts human beings to continuously purify themselves by respecting diverse life forms. Gandhiji's concept of nonviolence thus encompassed all living beings and embodied the eternal values of life in his thought and action. He insisted on the eternal sacredness of life that included trees, plants, animals. In fact, all the creatures. Reportedly, the English historian Edward Thompson once remarked to Gandhiji that wildlife was rapidly declining in India, to which Gandhiji replied, and I quote, wildlife is decreasing in the jungles, but increasing in the towns. According to him, reckless and limitless pursuit of industrialization by all nations has posed serious problems for the very existence of not only man, but also for all living creatures and all kinds of species on our planet. The concept of Sarvodaya is also like that of sustainable development and forms a part of his environmental ethics. Gandhiji's vision of Sarvodaya implies a healthy development and environment that can be evolved by man to ensure his harmonious existence with nature and other living beings. He did not recognize separate rules for separate spheres of human life, but saw all spheres in an integrated manner which exemplifies best for the human ecological perspective. What Gandhiji preached and practiced corresponds to what we call today as eco friendly measures and living in harmony with nature. The Swadeshi spirit encourages us to consume commodities made in our own villages, thus promoting small scale industries which help ordinary labor, farmers, and weavers to live happily. Limitation of wants is another important aspect in Gandhian environmental economics. Gandhiji urged us to minimize our wants, to minimize the consumption, and thus reduce the burden on nature by avoiding hazardous wastes. Our civilization, culture, and Swaraj depend on the restriction of wants, he had said. He realized that the modern civilization and the market economics tend to multiply the wants and needs of common people. Bread labor is another important economic and environmental concept of Gandhiji. He valued bodily labor, saying, and I quote, the rains come not through intellectual feats, but through sheer bodily labor. It is a well established scientific fact that where forests are denuded of trees, rain cease. Where trees are planted, rains are attracted, and the volume of water received increases with the increase of vegetation. The Gandhian concept of bread labor encourages the use of human hands and body instead of machines to produce essential items like food, clothing, and other useful things. The economic ideas of Gandhiji differed from conventional economics and bore close resemblances with ecological economics. The term sustainable development was not much discussed at Gandhiji's time, but his ideal vision of the world, known as Sarvodaya, safeguarded the rights of future generation through the welfare of all by living in harmony with nature. Our concerns must be directed towards how we are collectively giving no thought to the welfare of the future generation. When we use something, we should remember that there are millions of deprived people in the world who are invisible. There are older, infirm, and sick amongst us. And there are those who are young today, but there is going to be a generation after ours. The situation is such these days because we have stopped giving any thought of the future generation. The real importance of Gandhiji as an environmentalist lies not only in his vision and his right understanding of man nature relationship, but the fact that he made honest efforts to translate his perceptions in actual life. Even before he became an internationally known leader and a Mahatma, he patterned his personal life and that of the ashram community that he had established on these ideals. His Phoenix settlement and the Tolstoy farm in South Africa and the Sabarmati ashram and Sevagram ashram in India testified to it. He did eulogize the village life, but he was pained to see the poverty, illiteracy, and unsanitary conditions in villages. Therefore, throughout his life, he kept on telling people and giving demonstrations on health, hygiene, and sanitation. Hardly any political leader of his stature in the world had ever devoted so much of time and energy on these problems with so much sincerity and dedication. Gandhiji tried to carry the message to the masses through the life he himself led. This is what made him an environmentalist with a difference. We have to remember that there are three problems in front of the world to find solutions for which we can take actions locally. The first one is how a man or a woman behaves with himself or herself. The second one is how he or she behaves with other humans, that is, with his or her fellow men and women. And finally, how he or she behaves with nature. And people saw Gandhiji filling water from the Sabarmati river in Ahmedabad in a small pot and taking as much as he required. They asked him, when the river has so much water, why are you filling only in this pot? Gandhiji answered that the river is not meant for me only. Once in the Sevagram ashram in 1936, when Dr. Moat from the USA had come to meet Gandhiji. And since Gandhiji had limited time, and so Father Moat wrote the questions on a piece of paper. One of the questions was to understand the essence of Indian civilization, to which Gandhiji said, it is renounce and rejoice. Actually, he had asked, what is your essence of life? To which he said, renounce and rejoice. The first verse of the Ishopanishad, which is Ishavasya sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gradha kasya svidhanam, that everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing really belongs to us. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non attachment. Enjoy it to the extent that is necessary for you and leave the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to you. So, renounce and rejoice is the essence of Mahatma Gandhi's spiritual life, and that is also the essence of Indian civilization. Now, I will play a hymn which talks about this same philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi in the form of lyrics with English subtitles. May I request all the participants to please put yourselves on mute. Put the mic on mute because I am overhearing conversation and it really disturbs me and it disturbs others. Thank you so much. Though Gandhiji's role and contributions to the political arena are well known, what is less known is his contribution towards health and wellness. Gandhiji was a firm believer in the principle that a healthy mind keeps the body healthy, and he stressed the importance of a healthy lifestyle and positive thinking. He led a very modest life. Not many are familiar that he had profound interest in medicine, despite being a professional in law and practicing it for almost 20 years. He continued his experiments with preventive medicine and health throughout his life. In fact, he pursued the study of medicine twice in his life till his belief in nonviolence deterred it. He firmly believed that good health is of paramount importance to any human, as without it, an individual cannot be healthy in mind or spirit. It is interesting that he kept mental fitness at par with physical fitness while talking about health and wellness. He advocated and emphasized the importance of health, nutrition, hygiene, sanitation, exercise, which are crucial and relevant even today. He said, and I quote, "It is health that is real wealth, not pieces of gold and silver." His interest in health and wellness was as great as his interest in politics. He insisted that adopting preventive measures for diseases was better than treatment. He also said that it was important to focus on cleanliness, a controlled diet, and an exercise regimen, and that it was best to avoid overconsumption of medicines, especially those that were not required. Gandhiji's life always evolved based on the learning from his experiments. During Gandhiji's lifetime, various communicable diseases such as leprosy, tuberculosis, malaria, plague, as well as malnutrition occurred regularly. Whatever Gandhiji practiced and advised was designed to address not only the problems of those times, but also for easy availability of health care for the poorest masses. Though Gandhiji believed in all systems of medicines, he was particularly drawn to nature cure, Ayurveda, and yoga, and believed in preventive techniques for disease management. When it came to his own health, he would treat himself through nature cure by fasting and experimenting with his diet. He always believed that it was important to understand what caused diseases and then remove that very cause rather than falling ill and then attempting to treat it with excessive medication. He was essentially a man of science. He approached problems in a scientific manner. Gandhiji's message to the world on the vital question of health and well being is very important. To him, the study of this question was part of the service to God and His creation, which was his mission. Knowing to care summed up his life. His message was simple and easy to follow. It encouraged everyone to respect simplicity, voluntary self control, reduce the wants, follow the tradition, cultural practices, the values, follow his environmental credo, and treat oneself with nature cure for living in harmony with nature. Gandhiji was very interested in health and wellness and remained ever vigilant about his own health as well as of others. He said that our lifestyle should be such that it should not let any disease come anywhere near us, and every person is responsible for looking after his or her body, mind, and spirit impeccably. He also advised that for keeping physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy, we should have perfect understanding of our bodies, which is made up of the five elements that are found in nature. And that's what has been told by our ancient seers and sages of India. And these five elements are air, water, fire, earth, and space. For the wellness of our bodies, the balance and harmony between all these five elements is necessary. For Gandhiji, the outside universe was but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in the atom. There is not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual spiritual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide of conduct in the daily affairs of man. The Sanskrit proverb says, Yatha pinde tatha brahmande. You are the universe within the universe. As within the self, so is the universe. What is going on within you is same as what is going on in the universe. Enveloping ourselves in the rhythms and forms of nature can be transformative and healing. Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition of India, recommends spending time in nature each day. Doing so allows us to experience the wonderment of this existence with all our senses. Nature allows us to shift our attention beyond the domain of our ego and to recognize that we are inextricably connected to the universe. From the mind body perspective, Gandhiji's standpoint was that health is an optimal integration of body, mind, spirit, soul, and environment. Environment is our extended body. There is a nice Vedic expression from the ancient wisdom tradition of India which says, as is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the microcosm. As is the universal body, so is the cosmic body. As is the universal mind, so is the cosmic mind. Another Indian scripture also teaches us that mana evam manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo bandhaya vishaya saktam muktam nirvishayo smritam. For man, the mind is the cause of bondage and the mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage, and the mind detached from the sense object is the cause of liberation. Yoga and meditation integrate all components of health, and Gandhiji was a strong believer in nature cure, the Ayurveda, and practiced Ashtanga Yoga as well. His experiments with nature cure were always on himself. He also advised his family members, friends, and disciples and treated them also to follow these remedies and treated and cured 30,000 patients through nature cure. He established the first nature cure center in India in March 1946. Otherwise, all the experiments were taking place in the ashrams that he had established. In the late 1920s, he corresponded with authorities on health and yoga, such as Sripad Damodar Satwalelkar and Swami Kuvalayananda for yoga therapy. Gandhiji's uniquely influential vision helped transform yoga into a system for promoting physical health, mental control, and an individual's duty to assert the fact that his or her Indian soul in the face of colonialism. He looked at health holistically and with a comprehensive outlook. He was particularly drawn to nature cure or natural medicine, and he made an in depth study of all the rules of natural medicine and the entire philosophy behind it. No work was less important than any other for Gandhiji. In fact, he considered service of humanity as worship of God, and every little activity therefore attained the significance of being part of the worship. Therefore, individual knowledge, attitude, and skills were directly linked with the service of the society. Dr. Sherwood Eddy was a leading American Protestant missionary, a prolific writer, and an educator who visited Mahatma Gandhi in the Sabarmati ashram in 1929 and wrote that Gandhiji's bodily presence is like that of Apostle Paul or Socrates. He impressed us as the most childlike, the most transparent, the most lovable of man. His whole character is centered in his unique passion in truth and reality. Now I will talk about Mahatma Gandhi's contribution to public health crisis of that time and later, of course, his advice as a wellness guru and the current pandemic. Very few people know that as a couple, Gandhiji and his wife, Kasturba Gandhi, contributed immensely 123 years ago to public health emergencies and service of humanity. During the Second Anglo-Boer War from 1899 to 1902 and in the Zulu uprising of 1906 in South Africa, he served as a stretcher bearer by establishing the Natal Indian Ambulance Corps along with Indian indentured labor and free Indians. Gandhiji wrote about this in his autobiography, and I quote from it. You will, however, have some idea of the impression created in South Africa by the action of the Indian community at the time of the Boer War. Mr. Escom, who addressed us, was sometime Premier of Natal and commander of the Natal militia, and so was the late Sir John Robinson, Premier at another time. We were present at the Battle of Colenso, Spionkop, and the action at Valkrans. We had to carry the wounded on our stretchers a distance of about 20 miles, feed and nurse them on the way. I was mentioned in General Buller's dispatch on the relief of Ladysmith. The leaders of the corps were recipients of the South African War Medal. In Ladysmith itself, an indentured Indian named Ganga Singh sat perched up in a tree facing the hill from which the Boers were shelling Ladysmith with their pom pom. He watched the flash of the gun each time it was fired and rang a gong, informing the besieged of the coming shell and warning them to seek shelter. He performed his dangerous and onerous task with unfailing regularity, and for this brave and faithful service, Lord Curzon sent him a toga, which was publicly presented to him on Lord Curzon's behalf by the Mayor of Durban at the Durban Town Hall. In 1906, there was the Zulu rebellion. At that time also we offered our services. They required only a small number. We were about 20 strong, a compact body of the nurse, orderly, and stretcher bearers. We had to carry the wounded many miles a time and march behind the cavalry, sometimes at the rate of 40 miles per day. At this time, there was no restriction as to the zone of fire. This little party took all the risks of war. A personal letter eulogizing the services of the Corps was addressed by the then Governor of Natal, Sir Henry McCullum. So he wrote in his autobiography. During the bubonic plague outbreak in Johannesburg in 1904, in the Coolie settlement, where the Indian indentured labor lived in very unsanitary, unhygienic, and squalid conditions, Gandhiji and his wife Kasturba Gandhi not only rushed to help the Indian indentured labor, but quarantined the patients in a very serious condition. They cleaned up an empty godown and made it as a makeshift hospital and treated them through nature cure. Gandhiji, Kasturba Gandhi, and the ashram inmates returned to India in 1915. In the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, Gandhiji opened up his Sabarmati ashram as a quarantine center and treated and served patients through nature cure, provided simple vegetarian diet to boost immunity and maintain physical distancing. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi took care of the families of the patients, looked after their physical, mental, and spiritual needs, gave them correct information, helped them for being remaining positive through prayer, meditation, and chanting of Ramanama, and taking care of each other during the time of the Spanish flu pandemic. Gandhiji had said on November 10th, 1918, and I quote, our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self restraint or sanyam, or of imposing a limit on our acts. While Gandhiji was practicing law in South Africa, he was suffering from digestive complaints. He used to take some herbal medicine. He thought that every time taking some medicine for improving digestion is not a proper way of treatment. One of his friends from the Vegetarian Society had given him a book written by Adolf Just, which was titled Return to the Nature. He studied that book and tried simple measures like dietary reform, mud application over abdomen, use of wet compresses, etc. He experienced relief by these simple measures. Then Gandhiji thought that such drugless therapy would be beneficial for a developing country like India, where most of the people live in villages and they do not have access to doctors and hospitals. He wrote about his experiments in his own publication, The Indian Opinion, under the title Guide to Health, and some articles on nature cure, use of five elements, and its effects. Those articles were written during the year 1906. In 1942, while Gandhiji was leading the Quit India movement and was imprisoned in Aga Khan Palace in Pune in India, he wrote a book called Key to Health. It was translated in different Indian and European languages. The book became very popular because Gandhiji had written with a novel idea, somewhat different from the ways adopted by medical practitioners and medical scientists. In the preface of the book Key to Health, he wrote that anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or vaidyas or the traditional health practitioners from day to day. Mahatma Gandhi wrote that health means body ease. A healthy person's body is free from all disease. He or she carries on his normal activities without fatigue, is able with ease to walk 10 to 12 miles a day and perform ordinary physical labor without getting tired. Today, the world is facing three kinds of crises globally. First is the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic, which is causing immense physical stress and sickness and fear of death or existential crisis. The second is the serious and long drawn financial crisis, which is also causing physical and mental anguish. And the third is the ecological crisis, which is impacting everyone. We must look for answers somewhere within ourselves by learning from the life of Mahatma Gandhi, who had said, "My life is my message." The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected, and soon the community is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this anubandha, this interconnectedness that sustains all life on earth. We are all in this together as one human family, as brothers and sisters. Whether we choose to see it or not, we only have one home. We are all living on the same planet Earth, our Mother Earth. Our ancient sages and seers have always looked upon us as global citizens, Vishwamanava, and said that the world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The current COVID 19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. We will have to learn to live with COVID 19 now and in the future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just must get inspired from the life of Gandhiji to make the necessary changes in thoughts, actions, and conduct for coping up physically, mentally, and spiritually. And that is the future that coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic is pointing out to us if we observe carefully. Many lessons are very clear, and some are still unknown, surrounding us in uncertainty. This uncertainty is causing mental stress, anxiety, existential crisis, fear of extinction and death, and mass psychology of living in depression and grief is pointing out towards this fact in the current pandemic. We are collectively grieving for the loss of our known lifestyle. If we still return to the normal standard of finding happiness by chasing after money, power, position, lifelong consumerism, then COVID 19 has given the wake up call. This kind of lifestyle of empty consumerism and mass distractions has only increased the difference between the rich and the poor. It has created the huge carbon footprint and has increased the misery of the invisible poor masses. When a crisis makes you feel stressed, meditation and prayer relieve the stress response. Fear and anxiety are worst forms of stress that become exaggerated when events become uncertain, when you feel a loss of control over the situation, and when the stress keeps repeating itself without let up. The thinking mind reacts to all of these conditions. It always has, even in normal times. But a crisis brings stress into high relief, making it very capable of lowering the immune system of our body and causing inflammatory diseases. Decades ago, stress was classified as epidemic of modern life. The Gandhian way of life is the best guide to practicing the coping mechanism that induces relaxation, calmness, inner peace, positivity, absence of anxiety, and remaining absolutely alive. Therefore, Mahatma Gandhi comes across as the greatest healer and the greatest wellness guru who is relevant for all times. The Gandhian principles of freedom from fear and care for all is a perfect prescription in the time of COVID-19 crisis. Gandhiji's emphasis on healthy lifestyle, positive mindset, empowerment for self-care, and care in the community would make perfect sense. With this, we come to the end of the third course. Once again, I thank the Indian Mission for hosting the course and the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, and the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, New Delhi, for their support. In the fourth and the final course on Saturday, 17th of July, I will talk about Khadi, Charkha, Gandhiji's ashrams, his minimalistic living, and Swadeshi. I thank the participants of this course and want to invite one participant each from each of the countries to share their views if they have any. So kindly come forward with your views if you have anything to share.
Namaskar, Dr. Shobanaji. I'm
Namaskar to you.
Dr. I'm Dr. Maria Luisa A. Valdez, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences from Batangas State University, Philippines. We're very grateful for the very enlightening inputs about Gandhiji's spirituality, wellness, nature cure, and environment credo. From your sharing, we have learned that Gandhiji is an advocate of equality of religion as well as interfaith dialogue, and that he is a staunch practitioner of naturopathy and yoga, and that he believes that spirituality is an underlying dimension that contributes to one's physical, emotional, social, and environmental state, which may be used as tools in realizing one's purpose or meaning in life. Rest assured that I'm going to share these inputs, which I have learned from you, with my students. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your views. Are there any other responses or views at this point? If there are there is nobody to share the views, then remember to tune in on Saturday, 17th July, same time, for the final course, in which I will talk about Khadi, Charkha, Gandhiji's ashram, his minimalistic living, and Swadeshi. So, with all this, I once again thank you all for your participation and wish you all the best in your endeavors. Namaskar.
Namaskar.